Hi guys, this is Pilleater, and I am joined here with the Philosopher.
Hey.
Hey there. so, you consider yourself an anarcho-capitalist person of a Chinese background, correct?
um, yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily always talk about my ethnicity, but yeah, I do consider myself as an anarcho-capitalist. And I am Chinese, I'm half, and I'm also half Vietnamese.
The reason why I bring that up because it seems today we're in a society where identity politics seems to matter so much. I mean, coming from a background
Right.
who's half
Gender and
Japanese,
race.
yeah, someone
Yeah.
like my background, it kind of makes sense where it's like, well, you got to bring up the identity first, and then you get interest, right? And make more things sound more racial. I mean, even the color yellow brings to mind the yellow peril, with the anarch black and yellow.
Right. Yeah. I was like joking around because someone asked me what my ethnicity was, and I was like, I'm yellow and black. And they're like, what? You don't look half black. And I was just joking because that's the colors of the anarcho-capitalist flag.
So why would you start something online where it could just be commentary about anarcho-capitalism? Because you can talk so much about the ideology itself.
What do you mean?
What made you go up and start this whole internet career as an open ANCAP person?
Oh, well, I mean, um, I I don't really necessarily say that I'm an ANCAP. If you look at like my Facebook page, I think the only place where say I'm an ANCAP and state it is on my Twitter. But like on my Facebook, the whole branding that I've developed is focused around philosophy, reason, and evidence, and using that to determine, what our truths are. Uh, Basically, using reason and evidence to base our beliefs off of that. But the reason that I started this whole page about around philosophy, reason, evidence, and anarcho-capitalism is just the philosophy that was the most consistent for me that I've found so far. So that's why I'm an ANCAP. But I started because I'm passionate about it, and I really want to spread, um, these principles of um, having voluntary interactions and maximizing consent and minimizing violence because so much of the horrible things that we see in the world today are rooted and caused by irrational philosophies that are inconsistent. So that's why I started this. I really want to open the discourse and reach out and talk to other humans and basically spread the culture that uh, there is such a thing, or I mean, spread a culture of having strong, consistent ethics, which I think voluntarism is the most consistent one.
Have you taken a chance to read Stefan Molyneux's Everyday Anarchy, or are you a fan of him?
Yeah, I'm definitely a fan. I haven't read that book yet, though. The only books I've read by him are On Truth, The Tyranny of Illusion, and so I finished that, and I'm like halfway through Real Time Relationships, but that's the only books of his that I've read.
To somebody who
So,
doesn't know what anarcho-capitalism is, it seems like the normie person would be like, anarchy and capitalism, that doesn't make sense. But how would you best describe if a stranger or a normie came up to you about what is exactly anarcho-capitalism?
Norby,
Yeah.
that's funny. Uh, let's see. So, anarcho-capitalism basically, I mean, anarchy means without mandatory rulers, and capitalism is the respect of uh, individuals and their property and their private persons. So when you combine that, it's a belief based off of those principles that there shouldn't be mandatory rulers and that people should be respected in their property and their persons, and that force shouldn't be initiated on them, and that well, partially capitalism is a way for people to for societies to increase prosperity by people trading voluntarily with each other. Um, so that's what anarcho-capitalism is. It's just trying to combine those, and I think it's just an attempt to, if the definitions of anarchy and capitalism, then by saying you're an ANCAP, someone else who knows those definitions could combine it and be like, oh, okay, this is what you believe and stand for.
How much
So,
of the influences of anarcho capitalism take roots from libertarianism? Because I came from that libertarian background and I like people like Murray Rothbard or von Mises.
um, I'm not sure actually. I personally don't really know the history of, um, you know, if anarcho-capitalism came first. I mean, I think classical liberalism was the first thing, which is essentially, from my understanding, what anarcho-capitalism is. It's a respect of property rights. And it seems like over time, the things have evolved to include more principles, such as the non-aggression principle. And perhaps one of my theories is that anarcho-capitalism was another way for people to separate themselves from libertarians who still believe in like a government. So they didn't want to just say, oh, I'm a libertarian, because that, especially now, like with the Libertarian Party and everything else, and all the different beliefs of the different people who say they're libertarians, I think that there arose a need for people to separate themselves. And I think that happens a lot when it comes to labels. As you can see with anarcho-communist, voluntarists is another term. That's what I am. That's what I say I am as well. And I think it comes from partially people just wanting a way to really distinguish their specific belief set and not to be grouped into a bigger belief set that may not completely fit their ideas. So like libertarianism is like the bigger umbrella, but within that, it gets really specific into the nuances of whether a government should exist or not, is necessary or not, and different things like that.
So it'd definitely be like a post-libertarianism or maybe more of the anti-libertarianism or just nothing to do with libertarianism at all.
I think it does have to do with libertarianism. Libertarianism is like this general idea that, about liberty and people should be free from coercion and force. But there have been a lot of people who say they're libertarians that are okay with some force because they think it's necessary for whatever reason, like, healthcare, like the leftists. Leftist libertarians, or for defense, road building, things like that. So libertarianism is the bigger umbrella, but there are people within that who want to, I think, come up with other labels to really distinguish what their specific beliefs are. So like anarcho-capitalism, it's a very specific belief set. But I don't think it's definitely not anti-libertarianism, and it definitely is within the realm of libertarianism.
What do you think about anarcho-communism?
Uh, well, I think that I have a few thoughts. So, anarcho-communism, it's basically communism, but they add anarcho to the name, to the label, because they apparently are also voluntarists, which means that they think that people should be free to choose and own their own lives. And they also don't believe in mandatory rulers, which is what anarchy is, what the definition of anarchy is. But they don't believe in private property, so they believe that everyone should share property. But then they make this like weird distinction from private property called personal property, And basically, the distinction is private property is the means of production. It's anything that you could use to produce something. So, like a machine, and in modern times, like a computer or even your cell phone. But private property apparently is like I'm sorry, personal property is like, personal items like a toothbrush, and also a computer. So, I use those examples of like a computer for both private and personal property because, based on their own definitions, a computer can be both, but it doesn't make sense because they don't believe in private property. So that distinction, I think, is just silly and arbitrary. And I just think, though, when it comes to if we achieved a fully voluntary society, I think that as long as the ANCOMs, didn't initiate force on others, and if they voluntarily, got with a group of other people who didn't mind having a commune and sharing spaces and sharing property, and if it was all voluntary, I see absolutely no problem with that.
It seems
So
to
yeah.
me there's a war, at least a civil war between ANCOMs and ANCAPs, and they'll go on websites like Facebook meme pages and say, "Oh, you're an ANCAP, you're an ANCOM." They make these jokes, but it seems to me that they're both coming from the discretion of anarchy. How much of the anarchy do you put in your philosophy, or are you much more on the capitalist side?
Um, that's an interesting question. So I don't really see anarchy and capitalism being on different sides. I see them as just a way to, just a term to embody like your specific beliefs. So, believing that there shouldn't be mandatory rulers, I don't think is on the opposite side of believing that people own themselves and um, should be secure in their persons and their private property. I don't see them as separate sides or opposite sides or anything like that. For me, it's very complementary to voluntarism. Because at the root of voluntarism and capitalism and anarchy is the principle that you own yourself, that nobody else can exert control over your body, that you're the only one who can will your body to move and to think. And so that principle of self ownership, is the root of capitalism, anarchy, and voluntarism. So I really don't see them at all at being, at odds with each other or anything like that. And that's why I say they're very complementary. As for the war with ANCAPs and ANCOMs, I mean, I can't speak for everybody who, makes jokes about the other party. Like I've made, my share of memes, making fun of the anarcho-communist ideology. Like, for example, what I think is an arbitrary distinction between private and personal property. Like, I've turned that into a meme before. Like, for me personally, it's nothing personal. I don't see it as a war. It's more just, using philosophy and deconstructing ideas that I've come across. Anarcho-communism is an idea I've come across, and memes is just a medium that I've used to deconstruct those ideas. And I don't necessarily see them as a war, but maybe I'm really literal, and maybe you just mean figuratively. And I definitely know there are some people who take it personally, like some ANCOM. But, I think that this sort of open discussion and free market of ideas, this sort of ability to make a bunch of memes and have discussions and debates, is very key to advancing, humanity towards liberty. I personally think it's all in good fun. And at the end of the day, if the focus is to learn and try and get closer to the truth, then I think it's good. I think the only problem that comes up is when there are people or individuals who are very dogmatic and are not open to being wrong. Which, yeah.
Okay. Well, my first introduction to anarchy, I think I was 15. There was this publication called Crime Think, and they published books
Mm,
like Evasion, Fighting for Our Lives, Days of War, Nights of Love. This is coming from the West Coast anarchy scene, where it's not so much as a political practice or set of economics, it was rather a
mhm,
form of lifestyleism, meaning that you don't call it anarchism, you call it anarchy. What I've realized is that
mm,
over time, especially with among pretty much an upper class or middle class group of white people who have read a part of that generation of crime think basically
mhm.
formed into something of the anarcho communist. And I think the people who are ticked
Oh,
off of the ANCOMs became ANCAPs, and the people who
huh.
disregarded both became the anti fascist action. Do you know of the West? Do you know of Crime Think
Huh.
Publishing?
No, I don't. Maybe it's my age. I don't know. But
Okay.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
How old are you?
Uh,
I'm 24.
I'm younger. So,
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah,
wow, I feel.
I'm younger.
But you like know.
So,
Well, you know about this publication. I haven't heard about it.
okay, well, the thing is, the
That's
point of the
interesting.
matter is that there seems to be a huge fascination with the concept of anarchy between people of middle to higher classes, simply because they might have monies, they might live on trust funds, they might come from families with money, opposed to people who are working class who go more on right wing kind of theories. We see this uphold of nationalism, and with Donald Trump and everything that's going around. I mean, with the whole Milo event in California, we now see the equivalent of the anti-fascist action coming out and trying to shut down Milo. And I'm pretty sure most of the Antifa have some version of anarcho-communism, or at least the West Coast anarchy with them. What do you think about the
Yeah, I've
Antifa
noticed that.
and some of these protests against Milo or even Trump?
Well, I think, I mean, well, first of all, I think your theory is really interesting. Like, it could be the people who are, I I don't like to say class because I think that's arbitrary to say like working class. I think everyone's working, if you're trying to make a living. Um, so I think that there are people who, there's like entrepreneurs or people who create content, they kind of work for themselves. And I'm being really general here, uh, could be more in line with anarcho capitalist beliefs because they really want their property and their wealth and everything that they've worked hard for to be respected and for them to keep all of it. Whereas I've noticed like a lot of anarcho communists, they've felt like they've had to struggle a lot just to make ends meet. So there's an attraction towards communism and people equally distributing wealth so that it's a lot easier to live and survive. So that's an interesting theory you have. What I think about Antifa is, I mean, yeah, I have seen, at least in the videos and pictures that I've like looked into, there I've seen a lot of anarcho-communist flags being waved, or just the regular black anarchy flag. Um, and what I think of them is, I think it's kind of, not kind of, like really just atrocious that they are, and not, I can't group all of them, but there have been a lot of individuals who claim themselves as Antifa who say they're anti-racist yet are racist because they generalize like white people,
Mm,
and say all white people are this way and
interesting.
they're terrible. So it's there's a lot of hypocrisy laden in their proposed beliefs. Also, they say they want peace and they're anti-fascist, yet they're out there destroying private property of people who have nothing to do with Donald Trump's presidency. Like for example, destroying a Starbucks, or people who did not cause them direct harm, like other Trump supporters, or even that girl who wasn't a Trump supporter who got pepper sprayed, um, who just had a hat that said "Make Bitcoin Great Again." Um, I just find it atrocious that they're out there virtue signaling, saying that they're anti-fascist. They're against all these terrible things, but they're out here beating people up, hurting people, just for being out there protesting with them, but just having different beliefs. So that's what I think about Antifa.
Okay.
I think that they're a very violent, dangerous group. Um, and when you bring violence in the picture, there's no ability to debate and come to, better conclusions about your understandings of the world. If you try to debate with someone and all they do is call you a fascist and then beat you up on the head for having a different belief, you're not going to, gain anything from that interaction except pain and possibly, a natural disdain towards those people. So
Interesting. I mean, we're definitely in a very dysfunctional era in American politics and of American
yep,
generation.
dysfunctional.
It's
Good word.
definitely, I would call it some kind of strange postmodernism where both the multicultural and diversity era of the 80s and 90s and of a few years ago is basically have gone and vanished. And now what we're seeing is this strange the end of the tipping point of the snowflake generation and the kind of queer anarcho generation, where on one end of the spectrum you have Milo, who'll say he's gay and Jewish and he's conservative, and because I'm that snowflake, you should be on the side too. If you look at any Milo videos, you'll have guys who'll say, I'm Jewish and I had an ex-black girlfriend and this and this is why I support Milo. And so at that same time, you also have this queer anarcho generation where you don't want to be the normative or the normie. It basically means you want to be everything but normal. You're gay, you're a feminist, you're something this. And then there's this everybody doesn't want to be the winner. And so what's happening is all this stuff is colliding. And so Antifa that will go against Milo, even portraying as a snowflake, will basically, it doesn't matter if you're a racist or a fascist. So completely the whole dialogue and confusion basically goes down to primal roots of... So the thing is, do you think the snowflaking is happening within ANCAP? I mean, even the term ANCAP sounds a little... How much can we avoid that specialing and put onto rational means as to talk about something that is meaningful and actually means something than get lost in rhetoric and weird, philosophy?
I'm not really sure how to answer that. I don't really understand your question.
It's more
Because you're
like
saying,
it's more like that. It seems to me that someone, let's say Blair White. Have you ever watched Blair White videos?
yeah.
Yeah, Blair White is getting the attention of people. She may be a tranny, but the point is people are listening, right? But people will also say, "Oh, if I would have sex with Blair White, even though I'm a guy," it seems like that. Do you think there's a balance between identity and what you're saying, or is it all 100% what you're saying?
Is there a balance between identity and what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's kind of like with Blair White, people not really listening to Blair White's message and more listening to what she is as a tranny, is that basically the
Oh, like
flip?
what she stands for?
Exactly.
I mean, I I can't group, other people. There are people who don't care about the identity, but there are some people that do. There are some people that comment on my page and go, "Oh my God, finally, like an Asian who believes with that."
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
I think, but the thing is, I think it's natural for people to want to identify um, and form groups with others. So if like another Asian person who's an ANCAP sees another Asian who's
Exactly.
an ANCAP, they will identify with that. And I've had that too. I think it's a natural thing, but I think what should always go beyond that is self-knowledge. So awareness of yourself and awareness that you're even doing that, and recognizing that there's nothing I would just naturally correct about it. Recognize it's a natural impulse to want to identify with someone else. Be like, oh, hey, another girl thinks like me. There aren't many girls that have spoken out about anarcho-capitalism. Cool. But recognize, there isn't some intrinsic value in that. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and that's what's more important than the identity. Like, it's totally okay. I don't care when people say that to me. Like, oh, cool, Phil, like Asian, and they ask me my race and stuff. Like, you know, I think that's fine. But, what's more important is like, how do we move forward? And how we move forward is focusing on the philosophy and the principles and being consistent with our ideas and our actions. So I think, as long as, like, even if you're someone who does that, which I'm pretty sure everyone does, in some way identify with someone else who looks similar to them, comes from a similar, background, childhood, whatever, I think that's natural. But as long as, you're somebody who thinks beyond that too, and isn't so focused on that,
Yeah.
and attaching all your value of your beliefs, and only believing something because some Asian who looks like you believes it, then, I think that's where the focus should be. And
I'm
yeah.
kind of the cultural anthropologist, and I've seen other strange forms of subcultures and people doing this and that. And from my own knowledge of my own background and hanging out with other friends, I've came to realize that with people, you might have in the classical gaming group people, there's a furry, right? Somebody who thinks that there's animal. Then you have someone who thinks
Yeah.
there's an elf, right? Then you have one
Hmm.
geek who doesn't like furries but likes gaming, but yet at the same time they're all together and they're playing games and they're in that weird subculture together, weebs and furries, whatnot. It seems to me that maybe you could have in this whole internet roundtable, it seems to me that there's internet civil wars between whatever. It seems to me that everyone can relate, so as long as they sit down and talk to each other. I mean, that sounds pretty basic, right? I mean, or is there
Oh, I
some
see what you're saying.
or is there some line between where it's like it seems to me that and there's also this phase where it's like, well, that guy's a racist, I don't want to talk to him, but it seems that it's like people, gravitate naturally to people that are I'll give you a story. Uh, you know, I am doing this project online. This might sound pretty funny. I've know people in my area who are basically within the Asian American community are kind of both half white and half Asian, as well as
Hmm.
both interracial dating between white males and Asian females and Asian males and white females. And I am being the teaser and joker, and I've developed this website and ideology called Asianarianism. There's even a website, www.asianarianism.com. And basically, I'm assuming that this pseudo nationalism is forming among whites and Asians because in the multicultural and diverse project, white people basically discriminated and chose their favorite non whites, which were Asians. And basically, there's this pan culture happening. You may call it weeb nationalism, Asian sexuality, something like that. But the point is, that this, according to this philosophy, it's very controversial because it's quite different from, it sounds a little far right Nazism, Aryanism, right? Like a joke. It picks you in the whole thing where it's being honest about discrimination. People don't like discriminating, and so it seems to me with the whole on your side of the end, it's like anarchy and capitalism, where it might sound something left, but it's not actually not. But then again, there's this interest with people who are sympathetic to things. But if you look at these things, it's like we're both talking about the same thing, but we use it in two different words to describe what we're saying about, right?
That's interesting. Uh, it's interesting what you brought up. I'm not really. When you started bringing up that when you started talking about anarcho-capitalism, wasn't sure where you're going with that and how it relates to the like Asian
That's what it
Arianism that you were
doesn't.
bringing up
Yeah, it
before.
doesn't. That's the thing. It doesn't relate to it,
Oh.
and that's why it's so if you were to say Asian Aryan, right? This nationalism of Pan-two people, right? It sounds something that's leftist, but it's actually not. Compared to something that's more anarcho-capitalism, which sounds more leftist, but two divergent things. Yet we're really talking about the same thing because it's this angry everyone go to your roomism, right? Everyone has a little
Hmm.
board on the internet, and everyone is talking about so. Like I consider myself
Oh,
alt
I
left.
see what you're. Okay,
Yeah.
wait. I think I see what you're saying. Are you saying like, are you trying to point out how people like even just on the internet, there's a myriad of different groups and different like random
Yes.
labels that have come up, just
Mm-hmm.
just have the number of which have just shot up because of the internet, like
Oh yeah.
gender neutral people or whatever.
Chaotic
Like,
neutral. Yeah.
oh man, yeah, like there's a lot of different groups, but are you trying to comment on where that might come from?
Especially in the
And
anarcho-capitalist model, how would you have an answer to that?
oh, I mean, I just think, like I was saying earlier, I think it's just natural for people to uh, want to find others who have the same beliefs as them. So whether you're a furry or a weeboo or a person who believes in gender neutrality, uh, you know, a bunch of different things, or like anarcho-capitalism, or finding other people who really value philosophy or whatever. Um, I think it's natural for people to form groups and continue discussing um, within groups of people who think like them. And I think that's all very natural.
Do you know of a YouTube blogger by the name of Prince of Queens?
No.
Prince of okay, or all right. Well, there's this thing going on the internet. It's been talked about called alt left, where it's basically the
Huh.
left wing faction of the alt right, where basically there are people who like the
Oh man.
energy of the alt right, but don't like the Hitler fetishization, the whole right wing background, and so rather like a DJ or selecting out their favorite records of what they would prefer as a new left wing and starting over and ignoring the French Revolution, communism, and the Frankfurt School, and getting the
Yeah.
values of friends, family, freedom.
Mm.
People like Stamsdat Broadcasting, Right England, on the Stark Truth program, we have mostly are in connections with the whole alt left thing, and Prince of Queens has a different view of alt left, where it's basically anti social justice warrior, anti this or
Mm.
that, but starting taking the values of what it meant to be left and making it basically anti egalitarian, right?
Mm. I see. So just more like factions and labels.
And so if we're going to be really autistic about this, this might
Did
blow
you
your
say
mind.
autistic?
Yeah, it's not to sound really autistic about this, but to blow your mind, what if I considered Asian Aryanism to be a subgenre of the alt left? Meaning that's a left wing faction of the alt right of white guys that have Asian girlfriends.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, well, it's a thing. It's a thing, and I'm basically the
uh,
first person to wave the flag of it. And I've said this in many of my videos, where basically there's this strange pseudo nationalism happening where go to your any. What do I say? I've been saying this forever. I've been saying punk rock shows, art galleries, vegan restaurants, nerd conventions, white male, Asian female, and some to extent Asian male, white female. And basically they're Hapu and Hafu children, or Hapu people like myself, and they're kind of there and they're just existing. And yet, as long as you wave the flag of Asian Aryanism, you piss off everyone from both the far right and the far left, because on one hand, the far right will say, well, you're a mixed race person, you're going to go in the oven. The far left will say, well, that's pretty
what the
insensitive.
fuck?
I know, right? That's what
What is
I've got
going
hate
on?
mail before. And the far left will say, that's insensitive. Why would you ever discriminate and only choose one person? You should be open to black people, right? That's
Oh
like the
man,
left.
it's so silly.
Yes,
Oh
exactly.
man.
And then
It's
Hapu and
like it's
Hafu
trying to
people,
say that you're racist, but they're the ones
exactly.
focused on race.
And basically, the
Like,
only
I just so happen to like this white guy. Why aren't you dating a black guy? It's like you're the
exactly,
one all focused on race. Like, why are
exactly.
you focused on race?
It's funny you brought. I like that how you say
Yeah.
that racism should be with whites included. That's interesting when you include racism both ways, because to getting back on topic, it seems also the alt right has been saying anti-racism is a code word for anti-white, or that racism is just to hate white people. What do you have to say about the whole law of racism, and how do you think you should apply it?
Oh, did you say the law of racism?
Yeah, what do you think about it? Should it be discarded? Should it be improved? Or is it
Hmm.
just is it
I didn't know there was
everyone?
like a law of racism.
Mm.
Like, what do you mean by the
Because the
law?
alt-right, their argument is racism is a code word for anti-white. It's basically a whole school to demonize whites, and white people and Jews made it up
Oh,
to
well, here's
basically.
the thing. I think that is a reaction um, to a lot of groups, particularly quote unquote minority groups. It's basically non-white groups um, who claim racism and a white privilege and stuff like that. And I think by them saying that anti-racism is actually anti-white, they're actually more talking about the group of people who have said who have called for anti-racism and have, by saying that, then in turn grouped all whites as being oppressive and racist. So it's kind of funny. It's like going back and forth, but like at the root of it all, like I just go back to philosophy. It's like, wait, let's define what racism is. Oh, okay. It's determining someone's value, whether they're superior or inferior to you, solely based off of their race. So which group of people is doing that? Is it the people who are saying all white people are oppressive? Are they being racist? Well, I'd say by that definition of racism, yes, they are. And I try not to react by creating another term because I think it just confuses things, which, the point you're bringing up right now kind of showcases that point where it confuses people when you then try and redefine terms and say, well, now actually anti-racism means anti-white, and anyone who's not paying attention to this war, this quote war, and back and forth isn't going to understand that. You know what I mean? So I try to just go back down to philosophy. And if I was talking to the group of people saying, we're anti-racist, all white people are oppressive, I would point out the contradiction in their beliefs. I would say, hey, you're anti-racist. Racism by definition is this. Do you realize by grouping all white people together, you are by definition being racist?
Yeah.
And that's what I try to bring it back down to. But I think, anyone on the alt-right saying that the anti-racism movement is, and actually an anti-white movement, I think they're also focusing on race instead of just the fact that these people who are doing that have really fallacious philosophies.
It's
And yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. Well, I consider myself a part of the avant-garde culture. I mean, I've always considered ultimately myself an artist, right? I never really considered myself a political scientist. I always thought I was doing something really artsy, and that's what really what I'm saying is really just a reaction of how I see life. My whole Asianarian blogging and podcasting is how I see life from this weird Asian American street culture happening in major cities, going and hanging out at bands like Juju, Mitski, Atari Teenage Riot, stuff like that. And really, if you met me in real life, I'm actually quite a normal person. It might be that I have an eccentric
That's funny
background.
you say that.
It might be
Normal
that
compared to what? Okay, but go on.
exactly. I might have an eccentric background, but I have pretty normal values and such like that. And it's basically who I hang with does it associate of what I convoluted as Asianarianism. Now, it's interesting. You can
Right.
proselytize someone on a movement if they find out that somebody that does good is like that. Let's say you're a veterinarian is a white nationalist, right? And the veterinarian, and you're like, the person who I entrust my dog to is a white nationalist. Therefore, white nationalism is a good thing because you trust the person. And then it turns out it's like the Christian club thing, right? It turns out there's this normal person in school. He's a good guy, and he goes, "Do you know I'm a follower of Jesus Christ? Let me give you the Bible." And he becomes a strange religious thing that's happening. And so I think it might be interesting for the whole anarcho-capitalist thing. Okay, you ever heard of identitarianism?
No.
Okay, well, identitarianism
You,
is
you've brought up like many different terms I've never heard
okay.
before.
Yeah, I know it's a crazy world, the internet. But identitarianism is
I can tell you're more versed in it than I am.
okay, but I'll make it real simple.
Yeah.
Identitarianism is basically an internet thing, or not internet, it came from France as the French New Right. And basically, the
Mm.
ideal was to reaffirm the whole National Socialism and fascism and make it more hip and cool and urbanite. And
Ah,
basically
interesting.
say that it's, look,
Hmm.
I'm not a racist nationalist. I'm an identitarian. I believe people have identities, and it's a lifestyleism, right? You wear a badge, and it shows you're an identitarian. And so there's like groups
Wow.
like in America, like Identity Europa. And so the media will call people like Richard Spencer and Nathan Domingo Nazis, neo Nazis, right? But they say they're identitarians. They're only doing that so they can tell the values that they have but be good role models, right? Richard Spencer and Nathan Domingo look like strange avant-garde stuff white people like hipsters in urbanite cities where they can relate to other people and spread like an infectious disease, right? And so back with the whole white nationalist veterinarian dog, the person will then give a good thing about that. Like, you turns out maybe your neighbor votes for Trump, therefore you give it's okay to vote for Trump, right? So I'm saying is, do you think do you want anarcho-capitalism to be more widespread, or should it remain a niche? And if it was to be widespread, do you see any role modeling happen in real life?
Hmm. Interesting. I mean, for your first question, like, do I want to see anarcho-capitalism be widespread? Yeah, I do. I want people to respect individuals. I really disdain the collectivist mentality that, and the altruistic mentality that you should sacrifice your own um, survival and best interests for the good of some subjective idea of what the collective wants, of what society wants. And another thing is I really don't like having mandatory rulers, having someone claim ownership over others just by virtue of being within their subjectively stated ownership of a geographical location, like the United States government, for example. I would love to say everyone, adopt the philosophy that at the core you own yourself, and no one else should have ownership over you, that you shouldn't be a slave to somebody else, that as long as you don't initiate force and create violence with others, you're free to do as you please. Um, and consent should be at the core of every human interaction. So yeah, I would love to see everyone adopt that. I think that society could be a lot less violent, a lot less chaotic, and a lot more peaceful and prosperous if everyone respected each other's bodies and tried to effect change through persuasion instead of coercion, which is using violence and threats of violence.
It's
I
like
really, yeah.
it's
So I
like
do want it widespread.
no, it's like your kindergarten teacher is actually an anarcho-capitalist, and there was no signs of the kindergarten teacher ever being an anarcho-capitalist until there was a day, like, let's say there's an anarcho-capitalist holiday, it's April the 10th, and basically everyone who's an anarcho-capitalist comes out and wears a yellow and black badge on, right? And they all come out, and it turns out the most normal people are ANCAPs, right? Would that spread some kind of positive vibe to make people more accessible to anarcho-capitalism?
Oh, I see. I mean, yeah, in some ways, some people, it would be more of a culture shift at that point if that was really, if that really
Yeah,
happened.
I'm looking too much in
Um,
the future, but
that would be cool. But, libertarian, the word libertarian, a decade ago, people were like, what the hell is libertarianism? It was very niche. It's like how ANCAP is so niche now. But it's gotten a lot of attention on the mainstream and has become more widespread to where a lot of people are mentioning libertarianism, even mainstream politicians and in the news. So I definitely think that does make it more accessible. And pages like Being Libertarian have over 400,000 people who like it. I definitely think it shows a big culture shift and a more widespread understanding of what libertarianism is. Um, and I do see that, I do foresee that happening in the future with um, the principles of voluntarism and anarcho-capitalism. Um, as people, as more and more people talk about it and really understand what the principles stand for and apply it consistently, I think that just lead to more adoption.
It's been said that the alt-right voted for Donald Trump and that the alt-right might have had a cultural shift to make Donald Trump's position possible. And through meme magic and the power of Keck, by going on the internet and doing these weird
Yeah.
things, the internet shows that it has more metapolitical power than the neoliberal institution and establishment that overrides us. So now, this is funny, that people who show Pepe the Frog are somehow far-right neo-Nazis or haters. Or even, for that matter, the pigeon that bobs its head up and down, that's been only existing for about 2 or 3 weeks now. The pigeon that bobs its head up and down, that means you're a neo-Nazi now. And if you go out in public and wear this Pepe the Frog shirt or the pigeon that bobs its head, it might mean you're a part of the alt-right. It seems as now that there's this coming out through the help of Milo and through others, this it's okay to be alt-right, or at least it's okay to be anti-social justice warrior, or this term red pilling is about. What do you think about the
Mm-hmm.
whole alt-right and that cultural shift? Do you think the alt-right is a fad, or do you see something happening about that? Or what do you think is going to happen in the future?
Um, hmm. Well, there's a few questions. I wonder which one I should address first. I see the alt-right as a big movement of people who are reacting against the status quo, the globalist agenda to have a one world government, and all the different ideas that have come about being politically correct. It's a reaction against it, and that's why within the alt-right there's a lot of different types of people. There are people who identify as anarcho-capitalists. There are people who identify as conservatives, minarchists, but they all share similar beliefs that words and what you say should not be censored, especially with force. That being politically incorrect is a good thing, and how we share ideas, and that we shouldn't hold ourselves and try to restrict ourselves just because we don't want to trigger somebody, and create safe spaces. And it's definitely partly an anti-SJW movement, and there is an element of the memes in there. And this is kind of random, but one thing you were saying earlier, because you mentioned autism, I was talking with a couple of my friends who make memes. One of them does for Anarchy Ball, and we were just making a joke about the meme wars of 2016. And we were just, and one of them said, like, meme war powered by autism. It was just, I thought
It's funny
hilarious.
because all I
But
have
that's
to
random.
do to make Asianarianism real, all I have to do is say, white man who's dating an Asian girl or having a fiance or has a child, you're a part of the Asianarianism. The problem is you're not yellow pilled. You're a new cook that doesn't want to realize your Asianarian potential. They get pissed off and then they try to shut me off, right? And then here's the thing too. All I have to do is present Asian American culture or, interracial white Asian relationships and say that there's some hidden nationalism, people get ticked off. There's memes right there, right? And so, you're right when you say that, and it keeps you going. What is one thing where you look at society or even on the internet why you think, ANCAP is real and that why it should be instituted? It's like something like, you might say that there's something wrong in the economy or something, or somebody's doing something that's similar to ANCAP. What do you think is the memes that are making ANCAP, anarcho-capitalism, leading towards that? Because I mean, like the whole thing, like the whole "don't tread on me" thing, right? When somebody waves that flag, that's almost one
Mm-hmm.
step for anarcho-capitalism. It seems like the founding fathers, in some respect, is I don't know. There's little memes in the sky that could make someone who into ANCAP really.
I see what you're saying. It's all about it's all part of infiltrating the culture. Memes are just another medium of doing so. Um, People are trying to, spread the culture of liberty, of libertarianism, self-ownership, voluntary interactions through a host of mediums. Memes are just one of them. They're a quick and easy way to. But there are other mediums like comics, like the Voluntarist comic series is one, or Eric July and Free Knots. They're creating rap music. They're trying to appeal to people who may not otherwise just go like, just I'm gonna Google voluntarism,
Same
like
with music. All I have to say is talk about music and comics. Oh, I love talking about comics, and I swear to God, go to any comic book store, and most comics
mm,
today have usually a white male, Asian female, or Asian male, white female couples with them. These like very hip Adventure Time-esque comics. The only reason why I bring this up is because I was an Asian studies student. But the point of the matter is, it's there, and
is
I
that
can
like
supply.
gender studies?
No, it's more like you're talking about Asian culture in the context of
Yeah,
America, and
I'm just joking.
yeah, well,
No, but
it's yeah,
oh, I was just gonna say it is, all of that. I do see, having more ideas of, anarcho-communism, capitalism, whatever, translated through these different mediums will result in a culture shift in the future. I don't know when, but it's already starting. There, more and more people are becoming voluntarists. Just being exposed to the idea, like one example of a really successful meme campaign was taxation is theft. And it started a discourse in so many different parts of the world, and bringing that idea that taxation is not voluntary to a lot of, as you put it, normies who would have otherwise not, looked it up. It's exposing them to it and perhaps causing further thoughts in them.
yeah.
Some people will double down and be like, taxation's not theft, damn it, and and just ignore it. But
It's
some people will. And I'm one of those people who used to be a statist. I used to be like identify as an independent, democratic leaning person who liked Obama and, you know, thought welfare was a good idea and public education was a good idea. Like I went from that to being exposed to ideas primarily by Stefan Molyneux, and thinking of an alternative. And without the internet being as free as it has been, relatively, it wouldn't have been possible.
Yeah,
So
it's
yeah.
funny you're talking about subversion. I mean, once again, anime to the West, especially towards a majority of white people, and the anime basically has such a subversive effect. People have became the
Mhm.
anime, and basically things like vaporwave and aesthetics and people
Yeah.
role playing believe that they are anime characters, right? Reading comic
Well,
books, I was
that's a step. I think I don't know. That's a step.
Anybody
I mean,
reading comic books by Andrea Tumine, Plutona by Emmy Lennox, these Undertale, right? There's these strange Asian American currents that are basically making Asianism real. I mean, really, I'm trying to say is while you're trying to yellow and black pill people, I'm trying to yellow pill people. And
wait,
basically,
wait.
you ever hear the whole pilling thing, right? Red pill, blue pill, white pill, black pill, right?
I thought it was only red blue pill from the
Oh no,
Matrix
there's white
reference.
pill. There's the
Like the
happy.
truth or not.
Yeah, there's white pill where it's like you're happy about things. Black pill, it's pessimistic. You're gonna die. Yellow, black pill, and
Nihilism.
you
Mm.
and cat people, right? Yellow, black pill, right? And I say yellow pill. Just turn them on to Asian people. And
Wait. Let me just make it simple. I mean, I personally like it simple. Like, I have only seen the red and blue pill, or have thought of it, because to me, there's only what I see is there's a difference between truth and falsehood, and there's a methodology for being able to distinguish between what's true and what's false. The scientific method, for example, is just a I guess, how do I say this? Just like a way for someone to group all together the different ways of studying epistemology, and it's just ascribing the term scientific method, and using all the principles of determining truth and finding consistent objective truth into a method. Oh, sorry, there's a plane.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so I just see red pill and blue pill, whereas red pill is like, learn the scientific method, base your beliefs off of things that you can verify, and be consistent in your philosophies. And then there's like the blue pill, just stay in your delusions. But I think, all these subsets, like the black and yellow pill or something like that, I don't really see them as pills. I see them as just associated beliefs that come with, valuing philosophy. So there's got to be, I don't think people should be dogmatic and say, well, I'm just going to be a black and blue pill because it's like, because what? Like, we have to have a common language for how we determine the truth. And I like to say it's philosophy, epistemology and the scientific method. And if the truth just so happens to be, I don't know, weeboos or like anarcho-capitalism, then that's what the truth is. And I don't necessarily just distinguish it as like a whole belief set, if that makes sense. Like, to me, at the root of it all is consistent philosophy. Well, the root of all beliefs is philosophy. But what differentiates one from the other is consistency, and how well your philosophy aligns to the reality as inputted to us through our five senses, sight, smell, touch, whatever. And I think that's the only difference when it comes to philosophies, is how close does your philosophy align to reality? If you're making a philosophy that all white people are bad, well, hey, that's obviously fallacious. And I don't think that should be pushed as some sort of dogmatic culture idea. And when it comes to other things like, Asian white people, that should be a thing that everyone does. I think that can also be fallacious, because you can't, you can make generalizations and theorize about trends. That's fine. That's normal. And I personally think it's intellectually stimulating. But to ascribe value to something as arbitrary as race and just saying, oh, that's an awesome couple because they're white and Asian. I know you're not saying that. I'm just trying to, illustrate my point here. I think that's when you start going into the realm of fallacies, and are moving away from consistent philosophy, and then are just moving into the realm of dogmatism.
That's interesting.
So yeah.
That's totally
Yeah.
interesting, because we definitely, if you were to follow by that, there definitely is a but like I said, the point of the matter is that everyone has their own, like you just said, different truths, and people could go different dogmatic voice a point, and that has conflict to these things. And definitely really interesting that in consideration, it seems like it seems like I guess anarcho-capitalism seems to be about your freedom, but also it seems like conflict is a part of life, and it's inevitable for a conflict to happen. And I guess this is the classic thing in America, where you have the First Amendment to say what you want, and you have free speech, but you have the Second Amendment to protect yourself to anyone implying that that speech is truth and wants to oppress over you. And yet we have all these cowboys with guns going, and it seems to me very relative to what about natural competition, and that's a very interesting thing to consider.
Yeah, definitely. Just another way to say the point I was trying to make is, I don't think it's necessarily. I think what's more important than what you believe is why you believe what you do. And I think a lot of people don't really understand why they believe what they do. We kind of alluded to it earlier. They may see some celebrity, as we've seen with all the freaking celebrities saying, I'm going to move away when Trump becomes president. All these people following, and be like, oh, I really value this celebrity and their political beliefs, like, but they don't even know why. And it's not out of any principle or anything like that. It's some people just follow the crowd. Some people have leaders that they follow, but they don't even understand themselves why they believe a certain thing.
Yes.
Yeah, some people just kind of follow the herd.
Yeah. All
Unfortunately.
really I'm doing is I'm being like I said, I'm just being a cultural anthropologist and coming towards truth to how I see the things, even if it might sound dogmatic or whatever and believe. But I know what you're saying, where if you believe one thing is the truth and the way of light, which seems like most religions do in most practical way, it seems like you're putting up these because you're saying everything is relative. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting things to consider. But I'm
Yeah.
gonna put this to a close. We're at the end of the hour, so to ask
Okay.
you one final question, what do you plan on doing in the future? And what is your future plans? Are you going to start on more blogging or more podcasting, or what are your plans?
Oh, I'm kind of more right now just focused on videos, and what I want to do this upcoming year is really focus on um, talking about the ills of the public school system and dismantling, all the virtue signaling beliefs of why public education is good and why um, uh, central control is good for educating children. That's kind of one of the main focuses. But in terms of mediums, I'm just going to be trying to make more memes and trying to make make more videos.
The same I have to
So
say about myself. Well, it's nice talking to you.
awesome.
Nice talking to you, philosopher. Take care.
Nice talking to you, Pilleater.
Bye bye.
Take care. Bye.